Earlier this week, I was having a conversation with a nurse who came specifically to me because they wanted guidance in terms of how to transition away from bedside nursing and into nursing informatics. And as the conversation was unrolling, we were talking about a lot of different ways that we could implement strategies and a lot of different things we could consider. They started getting excited and they saw the possibility of what the future could look like. But when it came time to actually take the actions that were going to be necessary to put this plan into motion, they hesitated and ultimately decided not to move forward. And when I thought about it, it became very clear that at the moment that the decision needed to be made, fear is what prevented them from moving forward. In the time that I've spent working with nurses to help them achieve their career goals, whether it's to leave bedside nursing in general or to get specifically into nursing informatics, there are three kinds of fears that have typically held them back. The most prominent fear is your typical fear of change. And this is something that a lot of us struggle with for many reasons. The fear of losing the relationships that we've cultivated over the years is a big one, and one I probably didn't give enough credence to when I myself first started the process. And it's because I never expected that that would happen. When I worked on the inpatient unit where I had been since graduation, I really took the time to develop good relationships with people because when I first started on that unit, it was all bullies that were running the show. And those of us who started around the same time, we kind of needed to band together to just get through a shift. Because the more senior staff, they had no interest whatsoever in supporting us. So we had to support ourselves. And I really valued those relationships. And as time grew and I became one of the main leaders on the unit, along with a few other people, we developed a really good core of people who supported each other, who were there for each other, who spent time outside of work together, and really developed some good friendships because of that. Now, when I made the transition over to nursing informatics, I assumed foolishly so that those relationships would remain intact. And while there are some key people that I'm still very close with to this day, some people that I'm very proud to call my friends, the people that I had really good working relationships with, many of them turned into haters. If those relationships had just disintegrated and kind of fell by the wayside, that would have been one thing. But to have people actively trying to beef me and bring me down and to talk trash about me was one of the biggest trips I have encountered in my entire career. And that's no cap. And I guess when I thought about it, that is something that I should have seen coming. And the reason for that is a buddy of mine, when I first told him that I was planning to make this transition to nursing informatics, he looked at me and smiled and said, "Oh, so you're going to become a nerd then." And that right there should have been my cue that I'm about to be perceived differently. I'm no longer going to be one of them. Another fear that I see is quite common amongst those who are wanting to transition out of bedside nursing is the fear of losing what is familiar and comfortable. I originally was going to talk about these as two separate things, but really they go hand in hand. What is familiar to us is what is comfortable. And that's what we naturally gravitate towards. So when we are transitioning to something else or to somewhere else, and we no longer feel like we know exactly what's going on, that is going to generate a sense of discomfort that then produces hesitation that sometimes will, again, become a chain that prevents us from moving forward. This to me was probably one of the biggest things that I thought of prior to even putting in my application for the nursing informatics position that I'm now in. Because that unit that I was on, I had, for all intents and purposes, become one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent leader on the unit at that time. And yeah, there was a lot of hard work that went into that. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of effort. I really dedicated myself to whatever was going on, any project, any meeting, any working group. I was involved, and I'm not capping when I say that. I was involved in literally everything that went on that unit. But that's because I loved the work. I loved the people that worked there. I loved being involved because of how it grew me, not just as an individual, but as a nurse as well. And it was a powerful experience that I am very grateful for. So leaving that behind was something that was going to be tough for me because, yeah, I was on top, like I said. So transitioning to a new area and a new team where I wasn't as familiar with what was required in that area. I wasn't as familiar with how to do the work. I wasn't familiar with all of these, like these unspoken rules and ways of operating that you kind of just figure out as you go on. I had to start all over from the bottom when it came to that. And that was something that, yeah, definitely caused me to pause, but it didn't actually hold me back. And I'll tell you why. Anytime in my life that I have gone through a moment of hesitation, not being sure what to do or how to move forward, or if what I'm about to do is the right step, I always ask myself, what was the reason that I decided to make this change in the first place? What prompted me to do that? What was it that I saw I wanted to have as being different in my life that led to that actually happening? And this has been extremely helpful in terms of just getting rid of hesitation, getting rid of that fear of losing what is comfortable and familiar, because there was a reason that I made the decision to change. And it's important to keep that in front of you when things get tough or when fear and anxiety just starts taking over. Another very common fear amongst nurses that I'm working with to help them leave bedside nursing is the fear of inadequacy. And this especially shows up for people who are wanting to transition to nursing informatics. We as nurses already possess all the skills that are needed to be able to transition to nursing informatics and to at least be able to learn the basics once we get there. Yeah, you may not thrive, and there are certainly other skill sets that you can develop ahead of time that will be extremely helpful. But nurses, we do it all, honestly. And because of that, there are so many skills that we develop: leadership, communication, change management, quality assurance. These are all extremely valuable skills that we naturally develop as we go above providing the care that we do. So we often sell ourselves short. And I've worked with nurses who I'm like, look at this position that you didn't apply for and it's closed now. Like, this was literally the perfect position for you. And they point to one requirement on the job posting, or they point to how many years of experience they said that they needed. And I always ask them, I'm like, do you believe that it's going to work against you if you apply for this position, even if you don't meet every single requirement? And they always say no. And then I ask them, how come you didn't apply then? And the answer is almost always, because I didn't think I was qualified. Are you the one who's going to determine whether or not you're qualified? No. The people doing the interviews are, the hiring manager, the HR staff, whoever it is that's going to be involved in that process. It's up to them. But the moment you chose not to apply for the position, you automatically disqualified yourself, and you don't know the blessings that you left on the table. You don't know what doors you closed on yourself because of your fear. And this is why it's so important to be proactive in terms of getting over that as quickly as possible. When we feel inadequate, it causes us to not just show up small, but to also think small and to be small. The reality is that people who feel small and then think small and then act small as a result of that, they're not the people who are actually landing any types of jobs whatsoever. They're the people who stagnate in their careers and then wonder 20 years from now, what could have been if I believed in myself more? What could have been if I followed through on those things that I desired but was too scared to do because I didn't think I was qualified? Never internalize feeling small or being made to feel small, because that shows up everywhere. It shows up the way you carry yourself, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you provide care. And you were not put on this earth to be small, right? I think a lot of us, we have an internal sense of purpose that we know we are meant to do something. And while we may not know what it is, we know there's a reason that we're here, right? I think that the vast majority of us, even if we feel like it's just to have a good time, all of us have a reason for doing what we do. And while, yes, the fear of inadequacy, the fear of change and losing what's comfortable and familiar can be crippling, the most insidious of all fears is the fear of success. I will never forget the first time that I experienced that. But before that, when I first heard that there were people out there who feared achieving what it is that they set out to do, I thought they was crazy. I was like, how can you plan and strategize and work towards being able to achieve something? And when you're on the cusp of achieving it, that is when fear starts kicking in. That was foreign to me. But the time that life humbled me and allowed me to understand what it is that people who struggle with this on an ongoing basis are going through was when I went to apply for my first regular position, my first line after graduating from nursing school. Essentially, I knew I was going to get the position if I applied for it. What was causing me to hesitate was what it was going to mean to accept a regular position. This meant that the freedom and flexibility that I enjoyed when I was PRN or casual was going to be gone. This meant that I would now have to work day shifts instead of just straight evenings like I was, because at that time I much preferred evening shifts. It meant that the lifestyle that I had previously had, I was going to have to do away with it. And that was scary, I have to admit. And this is one of the reasons that we engage in self sabotaging behavior, where we have an opportunity to move forward towards something great, that's going to allow us to achieve what we wanted to achieve. And we choose not to grab hold of it out of fear, out of what our life is going to look like, what our life will become, what we will have to let go of and say goodbye to when we choose to embrace success. And the reason why I say that this is so insidious is it leads us to do things like not even apply for the position. It leads us to not prepare for the interview because we're like, oh, I don't really think that I'm going to get it anyways. And even though we know deep down inside that that's what we truly wanted and we truly desired, we make excuses. I've heard it said that it is much easier to go from failure to success than it is to go from excuses to success. And I believe that this is so, so true. Because at the end of the day, if you're always rationalizing why things went the way that they did, then you will continue to rationalize for the rest of your life. The opportunities to improve, grow, develop yourself so that you can achieve something great, that is reserved for those who are willing to be honest about why things didn't turn out, to evaluate why they got knocked down, and to then take the time to create a superior plan moving forward that applies all of the lessons that they learned in the previous steps. But when it comes specifically to leaving bedside nursing, there's another very insidious fear that I wanted to talk about, and that is the fear of no longer being viewed as a real nurse. And this is something that I had never once considered when I was making my transition, but I will say, based on comments that I've gotten on my videos, based on conversations I've had with people, that there is a perception that the only real nursing is bedside nursing, and nothing could be further from the truth. There is a reason that we are asked to do all that we do, to learn all that we need to learn, to spend 4 years if you went directly from high school, or 2.5 years if you went an accelerated or degree holder route. There's a reason why nursing school is as long and as difficult as it is. The intention is that we will be able to use our vast clinical knowledge as well as the other skills that we learn, such as leadership, delegation, communication, critical thinking, to be able to use what it is that we've learned in other areas to impact things in a very powerful way. That means that oftentimes we will need to step away from the bedside to use those skills, because at the end of the day, your impact is limited to the patients that are on your assignment, or at most the patients that are on your unit or in your department when you're in a frontline or bedside nursing position. Now, when you move into a non-bedside nursing position like nursing informatics, your reach and your impact becomes 1 to X, because you are supporting those who are supporting patients. You have the ability to work on the systems that we use to provide and manage care. And that allows you to be able to have a very powerful impact that far, far, far exceeds where you're actually able to physically reach. In order to overcome all of these fears, it's critically important to, yes, remember why you wanted to make the change in the first place, but even more so important, specifically when it comes to leaving bedside nursing, to remember that you are using nursing as a way to build the life that you want. Nursing is not life or your life in and of itself. People get this confused all the time because the only people they chill with are people from work. When they're not working, they're hanging out or going to brunch with people from work. And there's no separation between life outside of work and work anymore, because it's all jumbled up together. For me personally, and I hope and believe it's the same for you as well, you are wanting to use your career, your knowledge, your understanding to build a lifestyle that you can potentially never have to feel like you need to take a vacation from. Of course, it's good to take time off, but it's important to also know that purpose and the ability to live a life that you're going to be proud of, that you'll look back on to say, wow, I really do feel like I did something with my life. It's predicated on your ability to use what is at your disposal, including your career as a nurse, to build a meaningful life that allows you to live a life that is reflective of your values. Don't allow fear to talk you out of your destiny, because there are lives that you are destined to impact in a way that no one else can, but you're only going to be able to do that by getting over those fears. If you want to learn more about why nurses are leaving bedside nursing in 2024 and how you can do the same, go ahead and watch this video right here.